So today we'll be talking about implementation of disease control measures through prevention. This presentation is conducted by me, Khomotso Mashiloane, as your RMITED transformation facilitator. And today we're going to talk about animal health. It is important for us to understand why prevention is always the first basic line of defense for animal diseases as compared to prevention. As compared to treatment. So if we look at this presentation, disease control strategy starts from your farm level. When you're about to take a trip, you get to a point whereby you notice that, okay, I'm about to use my own vehicle, but the vehicle doesn't have any fuel. Then you go to the garage. When you get to garage, you get there, you find different kinds of fuel. You find 93, 95, and diesel. It is important for you to check or align yourself with the kind of the vehicle that you're using, if it's a diesel or it's a petrol car. Then you select the specific one according to your objectives. Then you take your own road. This is the same way that we should apply principles in relation to prevention of diseases, because there are a lot of diseases in the industry. There are a lot of diseases that affect cattle. There are a lot of diseases that affect other species like chickens, goats, sheep, and so forth. So it is important that when you realize that there is a problem in your area, you go to a co-op, you buy the right medication, then you can be able to immunate your animals for them to be productive. Because we say a road to a success, it starts where a healthy cow is equivalent to a productive cow. So it means if your animals are not in good health, they will suffer from diseases and end up not being productive. Because one of the objectives that we are focusing on is to ensure that a cow gives you a calf each and every year. If it doesn't do so, then it's not a productive cow. It's very important for us to start to understand. There is a vaccine, there is an antibiotic, and there is a blocking method. Because I often get a question from farmers, or sometimes they say, Khomotso, I vaccinated my animals with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when I check the product that they are using, it's more of a treatment or it's an antibiotic. So it is important for us to start there to say, what is a vaccine? What is an antibiotic? And also, what is a blocking method? Vaccination or a vaccine. This one we normally use as a way to prevent a disease with a specific organism. So here we are stimulating the immunity of that animal with that specific vaccine that we are using. It means, if you can look at the product that I'm showing here, it means if, let's say, you're using botulinum, in this case, you'll be vaccinating only for botulism and anthrax. There is no way that you can cover other diseases when you're using this vaccination. Then staying with the Brucella S19. So this one also covers your contagious abortion, Decashore, your clostridial diseases. So you are giving the animal a specific vaccine for a specific disease. That animal will be protected against that specific disease. And you only vaccinate before the animal gets infected with a specific disease. If the animal is already sick with that specific disease, this vaccination will not work accordingly. Then when we look at the antibiotic, most of the farmers, when an animal is sick, they use antibiotic. When animal is sick, they use antibiotic. It is important for us to understand what is an antibiotic. An antibiotic we normally use to treat ongoing infections. So under antibiotics, we have bacteriostatic and bacteriocidal. So the bacteriostatic, sorry about that, is the one that we use to inhibit growth and replication of the bacteria, while the oxidial is the one that we use to kill the bacteria. So normally we have two acts that they play in role in the agricultural sector. We have Act 36 and then we have Act 101. So Act 36 are normally your over-counter medications that you get through your nearest co-op. And then 101 are the ones that are regulated, mainly you get it through the vets. So with our over-counter medications, that's where you can normally get your bacteriostatic, which they help to prevent or to inhibit the growth of the bacteria. So if you can look at the picture that shows there, it shows that when an animal is infected with certain bacteria, but you don't give it any antibiotic, it means that bacteria will continue to multiply. But if now you give them some bacteriostatics, like your Oxytetra, we are talking about your terramycin, your Maxited, your Revelin, your Ultrated, your Somycin, and so forth. So those kind of products, they help in inhibiting the growth of that bacteria, while your penicillin products such as your duplicillin, they help in killing the bacteria. That's why it is important for us to understand the differences of these antibiotics for us to be able to use them accordingly. Because currently with animal health, there is ongoing concern about the overuse of this antibiotic, And the problem is that in future, we are going to get resistance of these antibiotics. And then it's going to take the industry quite some time for them to be able to develop a new medication that is going to help in treating the ongoing infections. So as we continue, we say there is this method that we say it's blocking. I think this is the reason why most of the farmers, when animal just gets sick, they just give it antibiotic at any point. This method called blocking, yes, we use an antibiotic, but with an intention of preventing a known potential infection. So in most cases, we use it like to prevent, not to prevent, but to reduce the level of infestation of these kind of diseases. When we talk about, let's say, hard water disease, the red water and so forth. So this kind of a method is going to help us as farmers to block certain diseases that we are knowing. So in this case, what am I saying? I'm saying that if, let's say, you're buying animals from a region that you don't know that what kind of a ticks or so forth diseases that you're exposed to that site, we are talking about hard water mainly. So you are taking an animal, let's say, from northwest side, maybe you're taking it to Limpopo side. You might experience diseases that might not be there. So hard water is one of the main factor that it can affect your animal, because the ticks that are that side, they might not be there in the other area. So we use the antibiotic as a way to block the infestation of that kind of a disease. So when an animal has been bited by this kind of a tick, like a bone tick, then the temperature starts to increase. It has its own clinical symptoms and so forth. So this block method is going to help that the animal develops some certain immunity during that period of time. Not that is going to kill the bacteria, but it's going to enable that animal to develop immunity in that area. So this is not vaccinating. This is just a way of blocking your animals for this hard water disease not to be too much or not to affect your animal to a certain extent. Then it is important for us to control diseases, because a well-planned disease management strategy reduces cost and maximizes the head productivity while making sure that you're profitable. We are all in a farming business. So vaccination is the first defense of diseases. If you can look at the picture on the left-hand side, you see that cattle died. And if you can look at those cattle, probably they are pregnant. How much did you lose? You lost that animal together with the calf that was supposed to be your profit at the farm. You're losing a lot of money. So disease prevention is the first line of defense. So when we talk about the disease prevention, it is important for us to understand what is immunity? How do you build the immunity of our head? So we have two types of immunity. We have the active and the passive immunity. With the passive immunity is the first line that the animal gets its own immunity when it gets to this land. So passive immunity is acquired through colostrum from the mother to the offspring. So if, let's say, you didn't vaccinate your animals accordingly, and now the colostrum that is going to be formed from that mother, it might not have certain antibodies that is going to be in the colostrum to enable the offspring to survive the period. So it is important for us to vaccinate our animals at the right time to ensure that the colostrum that is formed from that animal, it has the relevant antibodies to protect the offspring during to a certain period during its life cycle. So that is passive immunity. Then when we look at the active immunity is acquired through vaccination. So this is it's an environmental factor that you can immunate your animals against specific diseases. So when we talk about the passive immunity, how does it work? We spoke about colostrum. So it is important that within 6 to 12 hours of the animal life cycle, when the calf is born, it gets enough and quality colostrum. So that colostrum is going to protect the offspring to a period of about 3 to 4 months. So it means if now the animal didn't get the right vaccination at the right time, that means the antibodies that they're going to be formed from the maternal side, they won't be able to contain those relevant antibodies that is going to help the offspring to survive the period of from birth to a period of 3 months. So it is important that you vaccinate your animals on the other side to ensure that the colostrum that is formed, it can protect the life of the animal until it's 3 to 4 months. Because when we start to vaccinate at the age of 3 to 4 months, not earlier than that. In general, unless vet says something else. But generally, 3 to 4 months is the relevant time for you to start to vaccinate your cows, because we believe that the antibodies that the animal got through the colostrum has protected the life of that animal until 3 to 4 months. If you vaccinate prior, the vaccination success tends to be low because you are introducing another organism in the body system. The antibodies that were formed through the colostrum, they will fight the foreign material that comes into the system. So the success rate will be short. As I said, it is important that 6 to 12 hours, on average 8 hours, to ensure that your calf, they get milk, and that milk is called colostrum. So some farmers, they tend to neglect the size of their animal teeth. You find that a cow has big teeth, very big teeth. How do you expect the calf to get milk from that animal? So it is important for you to assess the cow teeth to ensure that your animal, they get that colostrum. Because if they miss that period between 6 to 12 hours, no artificial milk or any form that can replace that quality colostrum that it can get from the mother. Even if you can buy from the co-op and so forth, yes, they do assist, but there is nothing that is more natural compared to the colostrum that it can get from its mother. So we spoke about the passive immunity that an animal can get through the mother. So now let's talk about the active immunity. So with the active immunity, now we are talking about now you are vaccinating. The animal has reached 3 to 4 months of its age. Now let's vaccinate that animal. How do you vaccinate that animal to ensure that that animal is protected from the diseases? So you give the animal the right vaccine, the correct animal, and also at the correct time. So when you say the correct animal, different vaccines, they're registered for different species. You find a vaccine saying this one is only registered for cattle, this one is only registered for sheep, this one is only registered for goat and sheep, something like that. So, example, lumpy skin disease, it's a disease that is found in cattle only. So it means even if, let's say, your animal is sick, and then let's say, for instance, okay, let me not say it's sick. Let's say, for instance, you have a problem with lumpy skin in your area, and then you go to your co-op, you buy lumpy skin disease. That's where you're going to vaccinate that animal. So that is an appropriate vaccine for what? Registered for cattle. And then also, when we say the correct time, you have to look at the season. When are you going to vaccinate that animal? Because this disease, let's say, for instance, is more prevalent, or it's normally occurs around, let's say, when the rain starts to fall. So the time when you're going to vaccinate, that's the right time to protect your animals against that infection or that disease. So this is important for you to keep it in mind, that you have to look at the right vaccine, the correct animal, and also at the correct time. So going forward, some people, they ask themselves, so what is a vaccine? So vaccine, it's either it's a dead or it's a live weakened disease containing an organism or an agent. So this vaccine, they help in building the antibodies for a specific organism. So this organism, they're going to help this animal to be protected against the disease for a certain period of time. So in these vaccines, we have two types of vaccines. We have the modified live vaccines or the dead vaccines, and also we have the modified live vaccines, and we also have the dead vaccines. So with the modified live vaccines, as you can see, example is lumpy skin. Normally, how I best differentiate it to farmers is to say, look at those types of vaccine and how they work. Each of one, they have its own advantage. Each of one has its own disadvantages. But it's unfortunate that it's sometimes with other product in the market, we don't have a choice on which vaccine are we going to choose. You find it, let's say, lumpy skin is only available as modified live vaccine, and there is no, let's say, dead vaccine available related to that. But they differ, and how you handle them, they also differ. So, example, it's LumpyVax. So with LumpyVax, you find a diluent and you also find a pill. So it is important that you mix the vaccine accordingly. Then once the vaccine has been mixed accordingly, then that's where you can go to your animal and give that animal a shot. So when you give that animal a shot, immediately once you have combined the pill and the diluent, the live vaccine start to be active in the system. The live vaccine, that's a period where you should introduce it in the system. So you have to work it in around for a period of 32 an hour. So if, let's say, you keep it for 2 or 3 hours, that modified live vaccines will be dead by then. So it is important for us as farmers or as technicians or as students to ensure that we check the kind of vaccine that we are using. And it is also important we look at the advantages and the disadvantages. So one of the advantages also of this LumpyVax is that once you have introduced it once in the animal system for this year, then you're done with it. Then you're going to do it next year at the same time. So you just, as says there as an advantage, it's a single dose that you can use to immunize your animals. So if now you have injured your animal, this is, let's say it's August, then next year, August, that's where this vaccine can be repeated again. And then it's also cheaper as compared to any other dose vaccine. And then it's also a better way for your animals to survive the vaccine, to survive the disease within a shorter period of time, because it doesn't require a boost. We are going to go in detail about a vaccine that requires a boost at the later stage. However, because this vaccine, as we said, it's a modified live vaccine, it requires appropriate handling. It requires appropriate handling. And also, it is not recommended in all stages of pregnancy, or when an animal, let's say, is pregnant. Some of these vaccines, they might not be used. And some of these vaccines, they can be used. And also you have to look at the stage of the pregnancy of your animals. Let's say, for instance, you find this vaccine, say in the 3rd trimester, you don't have to vaccinate this because these animals, they're going to abort. But in the early stages of gestation, that's where you can use this vaccination. So it is important for you to look into that. Then when we talk about the dead or the killed or the modified vaccines, so these ones, they require a boost. So you give it the animal, let's say when you give this animal for the first time in its life, you give it, let's say now it's August, it says within 4 to 6 weeks, that's where you can repeat this vaccine again. So when you give it to the animals for the first time in its life, it requires a boost. But after then, you can just give it on an annual basis. So because it requires a boost, this vaccine, they can be a bit costly as compared to the live vaccine. However, this kind of vaccine, they are of advantage because different stages of, they're still not actually having much problem when coming to different stages of gestation as compared to modified live vaccine. But it is important for you to keep it in mind that this one, you give it for the first time. When you give it for the first time, you give it a boost, then after a boost, then you can give it annually. And one of the advantage about this vaccine is that after you have given it, let's say for the first time, you can still return it back to the refrigerator. However, please keep the cold chain of that vaccine. You give it a boost, you return it back, or you go and buy that vaccine. Once you open it, you can also keep it back to the refrigerator. As compared to live vaccine, whereby once you have opened it, you have to vaccinate your animals and it should be done by the end. So we spoke about the cold chain, the vaccination, the vaccines. So these vaccines, they need to be kept at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, not higher, not below than that. We understand that at the moment we're facing load shedding and so forth, and some of the manufacturers, they advise that farmers, sometimes they should not keep these vaccines at the farms because if they don't have any backup, because this is important for us to keep in mind that the cold chain play a huge role in making sure that your vaccines are in the right way. So when you keep your vaccines, make sure that you don't freeze them. And then also when load shedding kicks in, at least make sure that they are in ice pack or something like that, where you can maintain that cold chain. When also you're going to vaccinate your animals, make sure that the vaccine is not exposed to sunlight. Sometimes I know we just, let's say you draw some vaccine, then you go to the animals, you java those animals, and then you just keep waiting there while waiting for the new flock to come in. So it is important that during that moment you take that vaccine or that you put it back to the cold chain for you to make sure that that vaccine is not exposed to sun and the temperature doesn't increase above 8 degrees Celsius. So in this vaccination, we spoke about it. In this vaccination, this is how the graph looks like. If you look at how these animals are responding to the vaccines, here we are talking about the modified dead vaccine. So when you introduce it for the first time in the animal's life, these animal antibodies didn't have that immunity against that. So you introduce that vaccine to the animal's life for the first time. Then these animals start to do what? We call it a primary immune response. So these animals start to recognize that, oh, okay, there is something that is being placed in my system. Let me start to create some antibodies for it. Then you start to create some antibodies. But now, because you're introducing it for the first time, and we say it's a modified dead vaccine, what's going to happen there? Then the immunity, after it is recognized, starts to drop a bit down. Then if you don't give your animals second boost, it means the immunity will go down, as this graph indicates. But now, hence we say it is important within 4 to 6 weeks to boost that vaccination, that vaccine. Then after then, when you boost it for the second time, the system recognizes the antibodies. The system recognizes the antibodies that were introduced, surely the immunity, the organism that was introduced in the prior stage. Then it starts to pick up the momentum to say, okay, now I can last you for a period of about a year. Then after that period of a year, that vaccine also starts, that immunity starts to go down. It is important for you to give it another booster or another vaccine in year goes up. That's way. So this goes back to record keeping. You give it for the first time, you keep records. At what date did I give my animal? Then, and which day am I going to give it a boost? Then again, after then, what is the annual plan for me to give it a boost again? Or an annual vaccination related to that vaccine. So this is how we can protect our head against diseases. So one of the guidelines, we say effective guidelines for vaccination. Number one, start with the equipment that you're using. Use a clean needle for every animal. That's the best practice, but is it practical? So it's not really practical. So that's why we say at least use a needle for every 5 to 10 animals. That's the best practice. But within that flock, let's say now I decided to say 5 animals, I'm going to give them a Jova for whatever vaccine. But I recognize or I discover that one of these animals showing some clinical signs that I don't understand. Then skip that animal, change a needle for that specific animal. So this is what we call a block test, or it's a practical use of vaccination through a best practice to vaccinate our animals. So also look at the equipment that you're using. Use, let's say, for instance, this one, the first one, it shows that it's highly preferred in most of cases because it has a glass that can keep the cold chain. And then we have the second one, which is a cup that is also used. And then the other one is just one of the automatic syringes. And then this is the normal syringes that we also use in various medications. So it is important for you to keep it in mind that the equipment that you use, they are clean, and also they are also sterile. So when we say sterile, we don't mean that you take your products that are disinfectant to sterilize your needles and your syringes. It is preferred that at least you boil it. So when you boil your animal, when you boil your needle, at least 15 to 20 minutes is highly recommended. And the size of the needle that you're going to use, we prefer to be 16 to 18 gauges. This is how you can be able to ensure that your animals are properly vaccinated at the right location. Because each and every manufacturer, they say that it is important for you to give the right dose at the right route and the right side of administration. Most of the vaccines, yes, they say under the skin, which is subcutaneous, but always read the insert packet. It's going to tell you on the right use of that medication. Because if, let's say, for instance, in the needle size, you use too long needle, and then now it end up being in an intramuscular, the effectivity of that vaccine won't be as good, or it might not work. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it is important for you to keep that in mind, that you use the right needle and also you sterilize your needle after a use. Then along the process, we say, do not vaccinate when there is an outbreak. Okay. Let me paraphrase this. Let me not say do not. Okay. The success rate of vaccinating animals during an outbreak tend to be low because some animals during that process, they are in incubation stage. When we say incubation stage, we mean that an animal is being exposed to a certain disease, but is not showing any clinical symptoms that I'm exposed to this disease. When you vaccinate that animal, then you're not helping it out because it's already affected. If we can also remember during COVID, when you had some signs, flu signs related, they were saying, do not vaccinate. It's because you are showing some clinical symptoms. The effectivity of that vaccine, it won't be effective as if when you are not exposed to that disease. So chances of survival or chances of immunization to be of higher success. It's going to drop as compared to when an animal or when there is no any outbreak. So it means do not wait for an outbreak to occur for you to be able to vaccinate for specific diseases. And at the same time, we also urge that clinical symptoms, you have to keep in mind that if you see that animal that is having some clinical symptom, change a needle, because if now you're going to jab that animal with that needle and then go to another animal, that's where you're spreading the risk of that disease from one animal to another animal, because the immunization or the antibiotics to be strongly formed in an animal, they take about 14 to 21 days. So when you just take one needle and then jab all those animals or vaccinate those animals, all of them, you are risking other hate or other animals to be exposed to the disease. Secondly, we would like to talk about animals that are sick. We don't know what kind of diseases they're being exposed to. The immune response of sick animals or animals that are in poor condition, it tends to be of low. So it is important that when an animal is sick, no, look at it and then say, now I can maybe give it some antibiotic or give it something else. Do not give it a vaccination. And also animals that are stressed, like animals that have been transported within a period of 12 hours, the immune response towards the vaccination tend to be lower. And as I said before, generally do not vaccinate cattle that are younger than 3 to 4 months because of the colostrum distractions in the system. The colostrum is it's an antibiotic. Those antibodies, they're going to fight that organism that is trying to get into the system. So it is important that we do not vaccinate animals unless under the recommendation of a vet or under his supervision. So lastly is that generally using live bacterial vaccines and antibiotics at the same time, it is not recommended, because the live vaccine starts to get into the system, try to build the antibodies in the system, then the antibiotics is there. Antibiotic, we say those are the biostatic, which they try to do what? To fight the infection in the system. So now you have introduced your live bacterial vaccines, then now there is an antibiotic. So generally those things, they tend to interact, and the success of vaccination tend to be low because of the antibiotic. But this is a general circumstance that you should also keep it in mind, unless other circumstances. So we spoke about the entire vaccination. Now, it is important that you are vaccinating your animals, but you're doing the right things, but there is always something that you might miss. If you can look at this picture, these people are looking at the other side, but where's the danger? At the back. So it is important that when you look at the prevention of diseases, you're looking at the foresight, you're looking at all directions, and that's how we can be able to fight diseases at our farm. Because at some point, being honest, there is no farm that can say, I'm free from diseases if biosecurity is not in place. So we have to look at animals that are being bought, animals that they move to the farm. Let's say vehicles that come to the farm. We have to look at people that come to the farm. Every day, a farm has farm workers. Those people, where are they coming from? Even if, let's say, it's animal scientists or veterinary people, it is important for us to keep it in mind. We need to keep records. Where are they coming from? Are they disinfecting when they get there? Also, another thing that we tend to neglect, which is simple thing, ticks, flies, those little things, they also play a huge role because they fly all over. And if we don't control that, you're going to have diseases outbreaks, because some diseases, let's say lumpy skin, has been transmitted by flies such as mosquitoes and so forth. And we also have some of the infections that they come into play, like paraphilaria, which they've been transmitted by flies and so forth. So it is important for us to look at it as an integrated approach. So when you board your animals, number one, isolate them. How long are you going to isolate them? We say it's a period of at least a month. It will be ideal. Then test for diseases. Animals that are born at the farm. Animals' history, you need to understand those basic principles. So if you bought the animals, at least minimum test for contagious abortion, TB, bovine viral diarrhea, trich, and also vibriosis. Those are the things that are very important at minimum for you to test, because if an animal is affected with TB, then TB is one of the zoonotic diseases. Contagious abortion is one of the zoonotic diseases. So when we say zoonotic diseases, one can ask, when we say zoonotic disease, what do we mean? We mean diseases that can be transmitted from animals to human beings. So if, let's say, an animal is affected with TB, but we don't know, we spoke about incubation period, we don't know, that animal can transmit that disease to other animals and also put a risk to human beings. Same with contagious abortion. So it is important for us to ensure that our head are free from such infection. Keep it in mind. That is very, very, very important. As I said, preferred 3 to 4 weeks, which is about a month. We keep it in mind that you quarantine your animals. Remember, same thing, same applies with COVID-19. People that were exposed to or maybe had some clinical symptoms or being in an environment that they are not sure, they were being quarantined for a period, for a certain period. So same applies to animals. When you bought your animals, you quarantine them. That moment when you quarantine your animals, that's where you're going to check some clinical symptoms before you introduce those that animal or those animals to your normal head. Then when you quarantine your animal, it is important that you keep them in a distance for about 20 to 30 meters away from the normal or your normal head that you have, that you didn't buy at the farm. And then at the same time, you make sure that they don't share water, they don't share any feeding sources, because that feeding source can be contaminated with diseases. You don't know what you're buying. More especially people that, let's say, they buy into general auctions, which those animals are not certified for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 diseases. You don't know what you're buying. So it is important that at the same time, you ensure that these animals, they are free from those diseases. My apologies. Okay, yes, it is important that the animals, they are free from those diseases. Then, during that period on which animals are being isolated for a period of about, let's say, a month, you check for early disease signs. This is what we call a primary health care. If you can look at this crucifix on the right-hand side, it shows that you look from the top, you look at the middle, you look at the below. Then also you look from two sides. So what do I mean by that? During that period of 3 weeks to 4 weeks or a period of a month, you look at the head. There are some of the clinical signs that they can show you that something is off. You look at the body. There are some of the things that they can tell you that, no, this animal is not in good health. You look at how this animal moves. You look at what goes in and what goes out. So when we look into detail, we say, when you look at the head, what to look at? You look at the behavior of this animal. Is this animal behaving normal? Is this animal maybe bowing? Is this animal maybe shaking its head? What is this something that is not normal? And it is important for you to keep it in mind, the normal, for you to be able to observe the abnormal. So you look at the behavior of this animal. Is this animal normal, or is something wrong with this animal? Then you look at the eyes. Are these eyes maybe having some tears? Are these eyes maybe is it normal of color? What is wrong? Maybe this animal is closing its eye a bit tight. So something that is not normal, it's easy for you to pick it up when you know the normal side. And you also look the ears. What is it that is not normal? Maybe the ear lobe is swollen, or maybe there are ticks in the ear, or maybe there are flies in around the ear. You look at those things because they play a role in early disease identification. You look at the nose. What is it with the nose? Maybe it has some wounds that are there, or maybe the mucus discharge that is coming out. What is it that is wrong? You look in detail to say, the kind of a discharge that is coming out. Is it yellow? Is it watery? What's wrong with it? Those things. Maybe there is some bloody, a bloody discharge that is coming out. So you look into those factors. Same applies with the mouth. Something that is not normal from the abnormal. Then you check those factors because they are going to play a huge role in early disease identification. Then we look at the body side. Then the body side. First thing, look at the rumen field. So the rumen field is that triangle. No, it's a rectangle. No, it's a triangle. Yes, it's a triangle. That is going to tell you if maybe the animal it ate or it didn't eat. So if let's say that rumen field, it's a bit, let's say it's halfway full or halfway empty in a way. Let's say halfway empty. Then that animal is going to tell you that, oh, okay, maybe it ate, but it didn't get enough food. Oh, now when it's empty, then it tells you that this animal didn't eat. Then you should be worried. So that is something that we use it to check as a general circumstance to say if an animal ate or didn't eat in a normal sense. But in a long run, that's where we start to look at the body condition. So body condition, it's I can say it's a way we assess an animal overall condition, if whether it's poor or it's very good. So normally we range it from a range of 1 to 5. So 1 represents an animal that is very thin, and 5 it represents an animal that is very obese or too big. So observation of a body condition is very important during that period. So if let's say a rumen field is always empty, always empty, always empty, it means that animal is not eating. Then in the long run, what's going to happen? Then the body condition is going to go down. So you have to look, let's say, in around the hip bone, how this animal, how thick is it? We look at the top line, how is it? Is this bone that how's the fat distribution that shows there in around the tail? You look at those factors. You look at the rib side, how are they showing? So that's how we can assess your body condition of your animal. Then the ideal body condition of your animal is supposed to be at least 2.5 to 3. So if it's, let's say, 4, 5, then we might have some problem, because an animal that is too obese, it might not conceive, it might, if it's a bull, it might not mate and so forth. So that is going to affect your production. While an animal that is too thin, also it's easy for it to get infections because the condition is not good. And this is what we normally see at the moment to some of the farmers because they're not doing any supplementary feeding. Now, especially it's winter, or we just come out of winter. So the grass is in poor condition and the farmers, they don't supplement, and we have these problems at the moment. So body condition is started with the rumen field, but end up where? In a very poor condition, which is a management thing that you could have also improved. Then when you look at the skin, it is important that you look at the skin. If in around the skin, are they having other lumps? Then you can know, okay, maybe it's a lumpy skin, something like that. Is this maybe skin, it's scratchy, or maybe is the skin maybe having some bleeding, anything that you can spot to be abnormal, then that is going to help you in early disease identification. Same thing with the coat. Is the coat normal? Is it dull? Is it any way that you can see the abnormal related to the whole hair or the coat of the animal to be not abnormal, to be normal, I mean. Same thing, we said we are going down. We said you're looking at the head. Now, before it was a body, now we go down to the what? To the movement of the animal. So when this animal, you have to look at those important points: lying, standing, walking, and the tail. So when the animal is lying down, is it lying on the side or is lying straight forward? Those are things that is going to help you. When an animal, let's say, is standing, is it lifting one leg up? Or maybe when it's walking, what is it happening with the legs? Or maybe the backside is all, maybe it's bending backward or upward, something like that. When you look at the tail, is it always whipping around or maybe standing one direction? So we know that when an animal is healthy, it should be able, let's say, when you get to the kraal, when you get there, the animal should be alert. It should stand and respond to you directly. But when an animal is lying there, even when you touch it and then it just flip its head, something like that, it tells you that something is not normal. Same thing. So now you have, let's say you have assessed those things in the morning. During the day, it is important for you to check what goes in and what goes out. So what goes in, you look at the mouth part. What's happening? How actually you have to look at the head side. How this animal is breathing. Let's say maybe it's having a rapid breathing, or maybe this animal is having some difficulty in breathing. You can feel those kind of breathing difficulties then there. So that is going to tell you that something is wrong, or maybe sometimes it's coughing. That is something that is not normal, and it is important for you to understand that something is wrong. I need to do something about this. Then during the day also, you have to look, is this animal drinking water? How much water is it having? And then also, is this animal eating? How is it chewing? How is it swallowing? So these are the early signs that they're going to help you in disease identification, because each and every I can say each and every sign is going to be linked with a certain disease. Example, if let's say an animal is having some difficulty in breathing, and then at the same time maybe the animal is having some mucus in around, let's say the nose and so forth, those things maybe we can say this one is more related to pneumonia. Or maybe if an animal is lumpy in around there, then we can say, oh, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So early disease identification can help you in protecting your head. Then lastly, under the observation, it is important also to look at what goes out, the tongue. So sometimes, let's say they're having some diarrhea. What kind of a diarrhea is it? Is it bloody? Is it maybe normal? Is it darky? What, like, you have to look into those factors which they play a role in disease identification. Look at the tongue. Is it normal? Look at the urine. Is it having, let's say, is it normal? Is it too watery? Maybe is it bloody? Is it what's happening? The vulva, the kind of a discharge that is going out, the sheet of your bowels, the teeth, is those things, they also play a huge role. That's where back to square one I said, the best approach that you should remember as a farmer is the crucifix. Is the crucifix that you look at the top, you look at the body, you look at the movement. Then on this side, you look at what goes in and what goes out. Those are the things that they can help you in early disease identification, so you can protect your head, or you take necessary precautions at the right time. People that are coming to the farm, we know that we are passionate about farming. We know that we are passionate about, let's say, some people, they'll be like bragging about what they have. Or some people is because they want help. Or some people, they want to give student exposure. But keep it in mind that people that they come from different areas, you don't know their origin. So it is important for you to do what? To have biosecurity in place. So one thing that you can do, at least have something to disinfect before they come to your animals. Also keep records. Some even they go to extent of asking where, let's say in the past 14 days, were you at? So they can know that maybe, for instance, South Africa, currently we have an outbreak of foot and mouth. Maybe this area, this person is coming from the red line area, and then now is coming to an area that is not vaccinating, and also actually I can say disease free from the foot and mouth. So if, let's say, it's myself, despite who you trust, it's important to ask such questions because they are necessary to prevent diseases that they can enter in your farm. So one of the best ways to have a well prevention system is to ensure that you have your head health program. And I know it's a bit complicated and at how it looks, but this is important for your farm to be able to be profitable and to be productive. And in our next session, we're going to go in detail about the health program, on what is it that's supposed to be there and how it can be managed accordingly. So in the conclusion, I would like to say it takes about 14 to 24 days for the antibiotics to be able to develop the immune system in the animal. So this is important for you not to vaccinate when there is an outbreak, because that period, anything can happen before the immunity has been developed. And it is important also to read the insert package of each vaccine before it's been used, because each vaccine, they tell you different things. And at the same time, it is important for you not to cram that, okay, this one I know is, let's say, botuthrax, this one I know is lumpy skin, this one I know is decashore, this true or sure. It's supplier, you're not a supplier. A supplier one day can just decide to change the instruction to say, this one is no longer 1 meal per animal or 2 meal per per animal, it's 5 mil per animal, or maybe less, then you won't know that if you don't read the insert package. So that's the first basic line for you to be able to prevent your diseases successfully. And always remember that prevention is better and cheaper than cure. When there is an outbreak, if you try to, let's say, viruses, they are not curable. The only thing is that we give the animal supportive treatment. So if, let's say, you vaccinated your animals at the right time, the animals are going to be protected throughout the season of the outbreak. So it is important for you to prevent and also make sure that your animals are in good health, and you protect the overall herd through biosecurity measures to ensure that your herd is in good health. How do you do that? You can also speak with your local veterinary to ensure that you design a vaccination program that is specific for your area and also specific for your farm. Because yes, they are general health program, but doesn't mean that all those diseases, they are relevant to your farm for you to be cost effective and to be productive. That's the end of this presentation, and that's where I'm going to open for questions. Now you can, please, you can, let me check the type box. You can raise up your hand and I'll give you a chance for you to talk. Any questions?
Yes, we have a question. I have a question.
Okay. Yes,
Khomotso, I wanted to find out, just to go back on the vaccination slide, where you mentioned about the vaccination that needs a booster and a second booster and the one that doesn't. Can you please just clarify that one for me? I think I missed it a bit there.
Okay. All right. Are you talking about this one?
I'm not seeing anything on the screen. Can you please click on it? There we go. Yes, that one.
Okay. So we say there are two types of vaccines. Yeah? We have the killed vaccines and we have the modified live vaccines. So when you go, let's say, to your co-op, when you get there, you'll find, let's say, the vaccine that is modified live. You find it in 2 bottles. The other one is the diluent, the other one is the pure. So when you mix it there, then that's where we can say this is a modified live vaccine, because once you mix it, that's where the organism or the agent that is there start to be active. Then you have to jab your animal for a period of, say, you have to use it within 30 minutes to an hour. If you exceed that period of time, then that vaccine is going to die eventually. As compared to the dead vaccine. So the dead vaccine, you find, let's say, your Supervax or your Bochithrax or so forth, or your Multivax P in terms of small stock. There, you give your animal, you buy that vaccine, it's just in 1 bottle. You shake it nicely. After then, when you jab your animal, you just have to keep the cold chain. It doesn't mean that you have to use it within that period of time, as I mentioned in the previous vaccine. So you give that animal that vaccine. However, because we say it's a modified dead vaccine, if I can say, so it's a dead vaccine. That dead vaccine, if you introduce it for the first time in the animal's life, within a period of 4 to 6 weeks, you need to repeat that vaccine again. Reason being is that since we say it's a dead vaccine, when when you introduce it for the first time in the animal's life, the system start to recognize it. But at some point, I can say tend to forget that, oh, okay, there is this vaccine that was in the system because it's not live, it's not active as much. So after then, it is important for you to boost it again. When you boost it, you give that vaccine to that animal to say, now recognize the previous exposure in this. Does it make sense?
100%. Thank you so much, Khomotso.
Thank you so much, Ratlerile.
Khomotso.
Ntate Sipuru.
Hey, Khomotso. How are you, my brother?
Good and self?
I'm okay. I just want to check. I saw on the chat box, there's someone who requested the slides, and the response was, "We'll share the recording afterwards, the link of the recording afterwards." But I think it will be much easier for anyone who's attending here to read the slides rather than listening to a record, sitting down and listening to a recording of about an hour presentation. Like me, there's a slide that I feel I need to look at, the second last slide of your presentation. So I feel like if you can share the presentation with us so that we can go read and learn more from it rather than the audio, it will be much better. That was just my request. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Your request will be considered. Okay, I see another hand from Ratlerile. Please drop your hand, unless if you have another question.
No, let me drop it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Ratlerile. And then Ntate Molwele. Ntate Molwele.
Hey, Mr. Mashiloane.
Le ka Ntate Molwele.
We are trying. Firstly, I'd like to appreciate the moment and the positivity that you guys are adding the value, in fact. Just a question with regards to hard water.
Yes.
I've missed a portion on the hard water because my reception was a bit poor.
Okay.
I saw part of the presentation was that we use the blocking system.
Yes.
Can you please just elaborate it further so that I'll be able to pose a question, or let me just pose the question, then as you substantiate, I'll get a clear picture. The blocking system.
Okay.
How
Yes.
effective is it? Because my background says your antibiotic or the Oxytex LA lasts for
Yes.
3 days on the immune system. Then in between the 3 days that you've used, maybe to a month or a week, how effective is it? How safe are we in that regard? Because the question comes because we've lost plus minus 6 goats through hard water. Okay, can you please just maybe something I'd pick up something different from what I've heard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, all right. So with regard to hard water and the blocking system, so actually one of the best approaches was supposed to be use of vaccines, but unfortunately the vaccines that we have, it's mainly blood vaccines. So which is most of the farmers actually they don't prefer to use, or maybe it's too complicated for most of the farmers to use. That's the best prevention that we can use. So with the blocking method, it's a way of saying that we want to build immunity of this bacteria over time. So we are using our oxytetras, but doesn't mean that the immunity, it's more like we are working with nature at the same time to say, let these ticks at some point to bite these animals as they bite them, but we reduce the severity of the bacteria to kill the animal. Yet it is not 100% to say it's going to protect the animal. It's to say that we are introducing this bacteria into the system, but gradually for this animal to be able to survive this kind of condition. So we are building, let's say, passive immunity to the animal. Do I make sense up to so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So let's say now you just bought animals, for example, then it's day one. So with day one, in my own recommendation, I would say, okay, you give your animals your, let's say, your antibiotic. At the same time, you give something to boost the immune system. So let's say your multi-means and your Provit A, whatever, something that can help the animal to have a very strong immune system. So you're giving that animal a chance to be bitten by ticks while the immunity is still building up. And then at the same time, some people, they do what? They also give those animals a dip, like a pour on. So a pour on works a bit different compared to, let's say, spray dip or so forth. So a pour on give, let's say, a long-term effect that when this animal has been bitten by that tick along, so it transmits the disease, but at the same time that it's having its own impact to say it's going to kill that tick eventually, not at the same time. Because when you use, let's say, spray dips or so forth, those tips that are on that animal, they're just going to go to the ground and then die eventually. But with, let's say, pour-ons, you are slowly but surely introducing the immunity on that animal. But hence I said it's a practice that is practical, but doesn't say 100% is going to protect your head. Maybe one or two animals, they're still going to die out of the whole head. Just like with vaccines. Even if you vaccinated, let's say, 100 animals, doesn't mean that all those animals are going to be protected against that vaccine. I mean, that organism that you've introduced. Maybe out of that 100, maybe 4 they're going to die, or they're going to have an infection against that disease. Ntate Molwele?
Yes,
Ntate
Mr.
Molwele?
Mashiloane. Mr. Mashiloane. No, I think I'm covered.
You're covered. All right.
I think I'm covered. I just have to implement the blocking system, or actually get this blood vaccine thing. Even though from what I've heard, it's a bit expensive.
Yeah, it's a bit expensive as compared.
Okay. No, I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Ntate Molwele.
All right.
Khomotso?
Ratlegile, is it you?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. I wanted to just find out, I don't know if I'm deviating or not, but sometimes on vaccines, on the vaccination boxes, one would say long acting. Does that have
Yes.
anything to do with antibodies or anything to do with the health part of the animal, or is it what does it stand for and what does it mean?
Okay. LA, and okay, we find, let's say, with Oxytreta, we find our animals, our, let's say, our antibiotics to be, let's say, LA or short acting. So when we say LA, like you have your Teralon LA, your Terramycin LA, Swamycin LA, RMITED LA, and so forth. So those LAs, what they simply mean is that it's long acting. So they tend to last a bit longer in the system as compared to the short acting. So your short acting, that's where you talk about your Obamycin 125, your Terramycin 100, RMITED 120, and so forth. So one of the main difference about that is that when you introduce, let's say, a short acting into the system, that short acting, it can last up to a period of 24 hours. So it means the second day you need to bring that animal again, give it another injection. Then until that animal gets, let's say, better after 3 or 4 days. But when coming to the long acting, your LAs, it means that animal, that oxytetra can last in the system for a period of about 72 days. So no, 72 hours, I'm sorry, 72 hours in the system. So if, let's say, you give that animal your oxytetra today, yes, you can give that animal another injection if it doesn't recover after 3 days. That's why even when you look at the price differences, your short acting are relatively cheaper compared to the long acting. So it depends, let's say, on an environment that you are working into. So if, let's say, you are in an extensive area, and then it's difficult for you to bring animal again and again into, for you to be able to handle it, I'll recommend use a long acting as compared to short acting, where you have to do ongoing treatment until it gets better. But at the same time, the long acting has a longer withdrawal period as compared to the short acting. So with the long acting, we can say the withdrawal period for the meat is about 28 days, while the short acting is about 7 days. So if you're planning to sell your animal, let's say if you're planning to sell your animal and it gets sick over a certain time, you can't use a long acting because it's going to have residues in the meat that is going to be consumed by people.
Oh, thank you. Well understood.
Thank you. Okay, Simpiwe.
Hi, Khomotso. Hi, Khomotso, and thank you for the presentation. In one of your slides, you indicated that there are 2 types of antibiotics.
Yes.
One that would inhibit the growth and the replication of the virus.
Yes.
And the other one would kill the actual bacteria or virus.
Yes.
Now, for me, for argument's sake, if I have a prized bull and it's sick, I would want to go for the one that will kill the bacteria immediately, because I wouldn't want to lose my bull. So
Okay.
if I go to a vet or a co-op, would I be able to know which ones would kill the bacteria? I don't know the term you used, it's a bacteria or something,
Okay.
something.
All right. Yes, I said bactericidal and bacteriostatic. So when we say bacteriostatic, is that this one, they only inhibit the growth. So they stop the bacteria from multiplying. Then while we have those other ones that are bactericidal, which they kill the bacteria. So because these other ones that they just inhibit the growth, that's why we said you get them over counter and you can just go there and you buy. They don't have some other effects that they might need a vet prescription. So over counter, you are easily accessible to get the let's say the oxytetras that are there. But when, let's say, now you want to kill the bacteria, that's where you need to go to a vet, and then it's going to ask you some questions related to how this animal is sick and so forth. So he's the one that is going to decide if whether you, in this case, you need a something like penicillin, something that is too strong as compared to the over-counter medication.
All right, thanks, great, understood.
Yeah, so I think that's where we should understand it in a way that under vet prescription, just like we as human beings, we go to a chemist or to a doctor. When you get there, they say this one, you have to go to the pharmacy under the prescription of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't just go directly, let's say, to the chemist, clicks this chem or so forth and say, I want this kind of antibiotic. They say we need a doctor's prescription. But over counter, they can give you something that is over counter. Okay, thank you, Baba Simpiwe. Ntate Pitsi. Ntate Pitsi, sebaka ke sa lena. Ntate Busy? Ntate Busy? Ntate Busy? Okay. In the meantime, let me look at the questions on the comment sections. Okay, I think the one for vaccine for hot water has been covered. There is a question that asks about that. Okay, the other one is saying, is commenting that Alfred Maponya can be, in your next presentation, please address the use of indigenous control method in animal disease like bush and veldt rotation. Okay, noted, Mr. Maponya. Ntate Pitsi, are you on? Bagumzi?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. It's your opportunity to ask questions. Bagumzi?
No, no question so far, sister. No question.
No questions so far. Okay. Can you kindly please switch off the camera for a moment? Okay, thank you. Any other question at the moment? That the pitch is not coming through? Babsin Piwe?
Thank you so much, Khomotso. At
Thank
a
you.
bare minimum, which or for which conditions should we vaccinate for?
Ede?
At a bare minimum, for which conditions should we as farmers vaccinate for?
You mean diseases that should be vaccinated for?
Yeah.
Okay, that will be our next session for next week.
Oh, okay.
Not for next week, I mean for the next presentation, which will be in September, where we'll have one of the vet will be joining us, and then we'll be discussing the diseases in detail on what diseases in which area and so forth.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so in absence of questions, I don't know if there is anyone. Okay, Thabo Marana.
Mr. Mashiloane.
Good and self.
Doing okay. I think I've missed a lot of your presentation, but mine is just a smaller question.
Okay.
I want to know what is really a right time for vaccine for Lempivax, for Lempi skin. Then what if maybe I'm late and I've already have a problem? What must I do, or how must I administer that? Thanks.
Okay. All right. As I said, most of the questions related to vaccination on specific diseases will be covered next in the next session. However, in attempting to your question, you would like to say, let's say in your area, at the moment, you are based in a Mutse. So that area, that site currently is not experiencing any rainfall or so forth. So the preferred time is to say before the rain falls. That's the right time for you to be able to vaccinate your animals. Because if, let's say, now you're going to wait for the rain to start, like now we're approaching September, it's October and so forth. So if now you're going to wait for that time for the rain to start, immediately once the rain starts to come in, you're increasing, there is increasing vectors that are going to transmit diseases around that time. Like for instance, your tick infestation, they start to be high, your fly population start to be high because they are breeding spots that are caused by wet areas. So as we said, lumpy skin has been transmitted by mosquitoes. So if let's say there is already a white spot, they're going to produce their eggs and so forth, then they're going to start to spread the virus to different animals. So preferably is that before the rain falls. So there is no, I can say specific time to say, but preferably before the rain falls. So one can say, I'm doing it in July. It's still fine because he's protecting himself before September and October where we have the rainfalls. One can say, I'm doing it, let's say, in around, let's say, October. That's where we have more of a problem because that time, chances of having rain are quite high. And we said the antibiotics for them to be able to form, they can take about 14 to 21 days. Good. That's the first question that you asked. So the second question is that now we have an outbreak and I didn't vaccinate my animals. So how do I go about that? So now when you already have an outbreak, like last year in around your area in Tatetabo, like Siabusa side, Mutsa side, that side, we had an outbreak that was so severe related to lumpy skin. And it was so difficult for us to control it in a way that some of the animals, they were already in an incubation period and they were not showing any clinical symptoms. So when already there's an outbreak, that's where actually the best practice for you to do is to say you vaccinate each and every animal with its own needle. I know it's not practical, but that's the best approach to do. Unless if, let's say, for instance, you see some clinical symptoms of to say this one, let's say, start to show some lumps in around the body, then you change a needle for that animal. So that's a better approach that you can do, but that doesn't guarantee the immunity of that virus against the lumpy skin, of that animal against the lumpy skin. Are you clear on your question?
Hi.
Okay, Babumzi,
Yes.
let me, I'll get back to you. Let me confirm with Tabo if he's answered on his question or needs more clarity. Data Marana? Data Marana? Okay, so it's not there, possibly it's answered. So Datem Z, this is, I guess, the last question of the day.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, mine is a practical question. Is there any way I can get the copy of the slides? Maybe via email.
Okay, we'll work around that. And
okay.
Once that, then you're just going to send it to you via the emails.
Okay, thanks very much.
That you registered with. Thank you. All right, now this marks the end of our presentation for today related to disease prevention. And I'd like to thank you all for making yourself to be available in this session. And we are looking forward to present various topics and engage with you as much as we can. As a training institute for the red meat industry, we are looking forward to address the lack of knowledge that you might be lacking in your production to ensure that you flourish or you perform better in terms of productivity of cattle, sheep, goat. So going forward, we'll be addressing various topics, let's say market access and so forth, like disease prevention. And next time, we're also going to call maybe some of the experts related to feeding and also treatments and so forth. So this is a very good platform for you to keep in mind. Each and every month, we'll try our best to deliver the service of need as per your request. And I thank you all for your participation and for your attendance.